All right, welcome back to the Just Build Baby Studio. You're listening to the BuildX Podcast, your ultimate guide to creating exceptional homes, innovative living spaces, and staying informed on all aspects of residential building technologies. I'm your host, Buzz Artiano. Today we're excited to have Andy Corbett in studio with us. Andy is a senior account manager at WPLM-FM, Easy 99.1, with 17 years of experience in the industry. Andy, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited.
So I'm not sure how we got introduced to each other, so I'm going to start with my own 99.1 story.
Please do.
So obviously lived here my entire life, listened to the station. I don't know how long it's been on the air, but I feel like it was on the air before I was born.
The station's been on for 70 years.
Okay, so before I was born.
For a while, yep.
Yeah.
I think 1955 was the launch date. The owner's father started the company, and he had a cable communications company. He did a lot of stuff with politics in Massachusetts, and then he got a license for a radio station. And it's been great. It's survived every corporate takeover, and it has been honestly a diamond in the rough for a long time.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating. So, I mean, I remember, driving and I would listen to the station. I'd be all the way in Worcester and still could hear it. I mean, you guys have a big footprint.
So I'm not sure how much you know about wattage, but a 50,000 watt station is very similar to WBZ AM, which can be heard regional. So when Jack Campbell started the company, he made sure he had a 50,000 watt station, and it actually
go big or go home.
Yeah, and it's funny because we're based in Plymouth, Massachusetts.
Yep.
We go all the way down to Provincetown. We go into middle of New Hampshire, pretty much all of Rhode Island, and to about the Worcester line.
Yeah.
So.
It's fascinating, so truth be told, I never have done any radio advertising prior to our recent start, and I just wanted to tell my personal story about that, and then we'll kind of get into maybe some customer stories or what else you're seeing. So obviously I'm passionate about ADUs right now, and we've spent, in the beginning, all of our advertising was on Facebook. We had done everything on Facebook. And not everyone is on Facebook, obviously. There's obviously a lot of people on Facebook, but not everyone is on Facebook. And you ran into someone that works here, I don't remember who, and they introduced us, and we had that conversation. And I was very doubtful that anyone still listens to the radio. I was very skeptical.
I could tell.
No, I was. I just, with the internet and scrolling and doom scrolling and people just sitting there for hour after hour. And with Sirius XM and all those things, I was like, I don't know if anyone actually listens to the radio anymore. So I said, you know what, Andy's telling me he's going to make it work, so I'm going to believe in Andy, and we set sail. So we're going to open up some live statistics that I'm going to read to you, so you can see what we've done. So if we can go back to those statistics, please. Radio, 20, but I would say that of that 20, 15 are definitely PLMs. So quick takeaways. So this is a 5-week period. So 10 open houses. We have a total of 97 families that have arrived in groups of 2 to 10. So probably 300 to 400 people. Top lead sources were 22% radio, 22% other, which we're not sure about. And then drive-by, believe it or not, signs out on the main road. Yeah. People pulling in saying, I want to see an ADU. So, and then Facebook was 6%. Fascinating, right?
So I feel like the way that you're advertising, obviously digital, radio, that is a little weird to me, but it's not surprising because chances are the people on Facebook who you're targeting are our audience within the same.
Yeah. Again, sidebar, when we started doing 72 Jordan Road, all of those people came from a sign on the street that said, for, Plymouth's first ADU, or from Facebook.
Yeah. And
everyone that came in said Facebook. So I just assumed, 7 months later or 9 months later, they were all going to be Facebook again.
But
that number's gone down.
That it might have gone down, but you're also getting the same person multiple times.
I understand.
So if Kevin's there or if the station's there, it's like right in your face. It's easy to be like, oh.
Yeah. So it was interesting, and the live event with Kevin did pull in a boost on that day, but it didn't fall off that much just going to the radio commercial.
Okay.
So it was interesting. So, and we're going to do a much better job going forward of tracking that. to be able to give you some real data. Now, the interesting thing that I find is, and again, kudos to you, your demographic that's listening to your station are my customers.
100%.
Yeah, so I was very pleased with that. I would call them high intent buyers. They're in either the very beginning stages, but they're serious about building an ADU for whatever reason that is, and they are local.
Correct.
Now, it was interesting though, we did have 2 people come from out of state just so they could walk an actual ADU.
And that was the Rhode Island couple.
Yep.
And then you said there was one from Western Massachusetts.
I think they said Bolton.
Okay, so probably right on the fringe of where we
Yeah. So quite a way. They drove over an hour to come and see an ADU. So
I think,
and then we had multiple people say that they saw it on Saturday, but they heard it on Saturday,
couldn't
come, and came Sunday.
I think the way you did it was great, right? I know when we first spoke about it, and you're like, I've heard commercials and they don't really work. And then you sent over your commercial because you have the studio. I think what you did better than most is you get right to the point. You say, this is what we're doing, this is what it is, this is what time, this is where. And it's more of an invitation versus just like
who we are.
Like a knowledge. Like
right.
The worst thing I can hear is that we want to be on radio for branding.
No, it's not branding.
Because branding is hearing your name and being like, yeah, I heard my name on the radio. What you did when we first talked is you're like, I need X amount of people with intent to buy for this to work. I rely heavily on digital. And there's a place in marketing where it's almost like a more the merrier concept.
Yeah.
So, hey, we're going to try radio. We'll mix it with this. It's all about finding the perfect mix. And typically, sometimes radio is not in the perfect mix, but most of the time it is.
Yeah, no, again, fascinating. I would have never in a million years dreamed that had worked as well. So I want to say thank you for
I appreciate it.
For more, I wouldn't say forcing me, but making me a believer that it was going to work.
Well, I don't think so if I recall the story when we met, our first meeting, I met Kevin at the golf tournament.
That's what it was,
randomly,
right.
He was parked next to my car.
Yep.
I do work with Blair and Will at Setting the Space, and they are running a commercial for you. I sent him an email follow-up that Monday. We met on Wednesday. I could tell radio wasn't your favorite thing. And then we called. You agreed to try it, right? Hey, I'll do anything as long as it works. This is what I need. You're very clear on what your expectations were, which is great, because a lot of times people aren't, and you'd never know where you stand. But then 2 days later, when we talked about your commercial, you were in a much better mood. And I couldn't figure it out, but you had said you got your first call from radio, and that radio was just the mentioning of BuildX and tiny homes,
Yeah.
right, from Blair and Will.
Right.
So without even spending $1, you could see that radio potentially could work,
No,
which made it a much easier conversation.
Yeah, much. And then, like I told you, we'll try it for a month. Right? I'll try anything once.
Yep.
And see what happens. I mean, and like I say to all potential, vendors, we're going to give it a whirl.
Yep.
We're going to know right away if it works or it doesn't, especially with radio, right? So you're either going to get leads or you don't. So
Correct.
So kudos to you.
Thank you.
It all worked.
And thank you for giving us the shot. Appreciate it.
So now we're going to pivot back to you. So tell us about yourself, how you got in this industry, what you did before, you're doing now. How'd you start and where'd you end up?
So I've been doing it for 17 years.
But give me before that.
So before that, I was a mediocre college student at a private school in Western Massachusetts. I came home, was looking in the newspapers, because in 2008, newspapers were still pretty relevant in finding jobs. I came across a job that was for Vector Marketing. I'm not sure if you've ever seen a Cutco knife presentation.
Sure.
Yeah. So I sold kitchen knives for like 4 months.
In live seminars?
In home demonstrations to
so
friends.
you were Tin Man sales
Oh
in the
yeah.
house.
And
hard close.
hard
Let me call my
close.
manager.
I've got like, hey, listen to this noise this knife makes. Oh, that's B sharp, because Cutco will forever be sharp with the guarantee we have. Like, it was the most hokey and like, it was pathetic, right? Like, but I learned a lot.
Sure.
I learned that.
Yeah, it's nothing
hey,
like getting your head kicked in to teach you something.
yeah,
right?
but I mean, 90% of the people were either my friends' families
Sure.
or my family, so no one's going to be really mean. But then it's when you got down,
But the good news is they're actually good knives.
yeah, I mean, full disclosure, Vector Marketing is great, Cutco is great. I still have my starter set that my wife like cooks with every day.
Yeah,
so And that was 20 some odd
Yeah,
years
no, they
ago.
are good nuts.
Yeah, okay. Do you have some?
No, but I bought them before. They
Yeah.
are good nuts.
So, spent 4 months selling kitchen knives. Within 2 months, I elevated to assistant manager of like the Southeast branch. 22 years old, thought I was like God's gift. And I graduated with a marketing degree, and I'm selling kitchen knives, and I'm working 7 hours a week, and my friends are all have full-time jobs, and I'm making the same amount. And then the friends and family ran out, right? then the easy part stopped.
Right.
I was managing a bunch of other people in the South Coast area. And let's just say my dad wasn't particularly thrilled. I was still living at home, like living a college lifestyle after college. So my dad and my mom were talking. My mom was a teacher. She had an open house with her students. She met one of her students' mothers, came in, and she owned a headhunting agency in the South Coast, Dartmouth specifically. My mom was talking about what I do. There were pictures of me and my brother on the desk. So she's like, oh, what's your son do? Yeah,
Sure.
He sells kitchen knives, and we really want him to get a full-time job. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with what a trade deal is. So basically, like restaurants will give $1,000 of gift cards, and they get $1,000 of free advertising.
Okay.
It's like a barter deal, right?
Got it.
I was a barter deal at Fun 107 in New Bedford. I was worth 10 commercials. So this woman who my mom taught, and I mean, I went from wearing like khakis and a golf shirt to wearing a suit and tie and not really knowing what to do. And
Yeah.
the guy who managed me basically wrote a script out. And he goes, you're gonna call 30 people and you just have to say this. And it became painful. But after like 3 months of doing the same thing every day, kind of, oh, you sold something. Oh, you sold something. I see people buy radio. And he left to go to Boston. And he was a manager in Boston before New Bedford. He came up to me and he goes, you're probably more talented than some of the people in this room. You have a personality that's better. You need to move out of your parents' house. And how you do that is you cut your own cord and you move to Boston. So he ended up getting me a job at a radio station back in 2009, and I've been selling radio and digital ever since. And
Interesting.
I spent time at Greater Media, which the station was WROR, which is very similar format to Easy 99.1. I was there for about 5 years. Never really a player, but a C player where I made money for the station, and I made some money. It was good. It was a good experience. I then went to iHeart for like 8 years. I loved iHeart. They introduced me to event selling, so I like the KISS concerts, the summer jams. They're an event-based company, so got a lot of partnerships there. So I was at iHeart for about 7 or 8 years. That was during COVID, and I'm not sure if you know what happened to radio during COVID. It went down the tubes because people were not in their car anymore. So our listenership.
Interesting. I did not think about that.
The rise of digital and the fall of radio happened in 2020.
Got it. Makes sense.
I mean, like you said earlier, doom scrolling and being on your phone nonstop, that exploded in 2020.
Wow.
And people were home, people weren't driving to work, listenership fell off, radio, dollars fell off, listeners per week, and all of a sudden trying to sell a $500 commercial when you only reach a quarter of the people you did prior to the pandemic was really challenging. Kudos to iHeart and a lot of those big corporate companies. They rolled out a ton of digital products. So I was able to pivot a lot of my business over to digital. I primarily worked with alcohol. So it was fine because they're trying to target people going to liquor stores. Liquor never went away, right?
Yeah,
That was one thing that boomed during
Essential
COVID.
services.
Yes. So
Construction and alcohol with the essential services.
yeah, I mean it exploded, and White Claw was one of my bigger clients, and you saw White Claw's boom was 2019 to 2023.
Right.
Obviously that it was the healthier drinking choice during COVID.
Yes.
So if you're not going to go to the gym, you can still drink and only have 100 calories per.
Perfect.
But a lot of my business moved over to digital, and that's kind of how I learned the targeted display ads, the Facebook, Instagram. And it kind of just became the normal. And, radio still has its place, it always will. But if you're not doing digital, and I mean, you know this firsthand, if you're not partnering what you're doing on air with online, then you don't have a full marketing plan.
Right.
So when sitting with people, without going into like, hey, COVID really ruined radio, because radio has bounced back. If you're not doing digital, you might as well not spend money. Like
100%.
spending $5-10 grand on radio a month is
not only
great.
that, but they're going to look you up after they hear it on the radio,
Yeah.
and they're going to hopefully watch some of your content. For myself, even some of the new people that are showing up that did not know about BuildX, that heard us on the radio, they will say to me, we heard you on the radio, and then we looked you up online, and we watched some of your content, and now we're here for an open house.
It's right. Like
and my search, my organic search has gone up, and my unique visitors went up as the ads were running.
This is the best part about digital. And I will say this because I love radio. I've obviously sold it my entire professional career outside of the stint with the knife company. Digital is the best thing for tracking people. 100%. You want to know your results, you get a report every month that says, here's how many clicks, here's your click-through rate, how many people. I can serve you an ad, and I can know that you came to my website and then you showed up at an open house.
Right.
I had a manager when I worked in Boston. He was an Army vet, and his big analogy, and I always thought it was ridiculous, is digital is like a sniper. One bullet, one shot, one impression, one person, where radio is like a quail hunt. You shoot and like the bullets spray everywhere. You need both of them because you need the person to get the one-to-one image after hearing the major spot that runs. So I think a partnership between digital and radio, or digital and TV, or digital and billboard is important. And a lot of people, you get it, and I know you get it because we've talked, but a lot of people just put all their eggs in one basket and say, oh, it didn't work. And it's like, oh, what are you doing for digital? And they're like, well, we make Facebook posts. Facebook posts isn't like digital advertising, but some people are still, who aren't in tune with it, that's how they advertise online. And it's, like I said, it's fun working with someone like you who knows the analytics, who knows exactly what you need from what in order to get there. And it's nice that you told me that because I know the expectations. When you have someone who's basically spending $5,000 on a prayer and they need it to work, it's tough because they're not going to tell you that they need 3 or 4 new cars sold. They need 2 ADUs built. They need it's refreshing to work with people like you, as transparent as you are, and about 50% of our people are there.
Yeah.
So.
Well, my belief is that if I tell you the truth of what's going on, then you can make adjustments. We can try different things.
100%.
Let's pretend it didn't work that well and only 2 people showed up. I would have a different conversation with you.
Yeah, I wouldn't be on the podcast.
No, you still would. We'd have a different conversation.
Yeah.
We'd say, what else can we try? Because the point of this podcast, and this is for not just potential ADU. There are contractors that watch this show,
Of course.
and they need to understand that it's complicated. Listen, I've only been playing around. My previous business that I owned and sold. That was all what I call belly-to-belly marketing. It was all direct marketing, either chasing fires, working with adjusters.
100%.
It was 90% referral business.
Yeah.
And we did very, very, very little SEO. We did no Facebook, none of that.
Direct mailers, maybe.
Yeah, just very minimal. It was all our marketing was belly-to-belly, lunches, dinners, chasing fires, all that stuff. So completely different. And then when I got back into this business, when I sold that company, and I, started this company, and then, I more or less, after watching some of, the gurus that I pay attention to online, Gary Vee and Alex Hormozy and guys like that, they're talking about how they do and what they do, and, I started that beginning journey, and then I had always, I wanted to do it, and then I was fortunate enough to find Kevin, and, he understood the vision of what we were trying to do, and he was excited for it. And then he and I went out to Hormozy together, along with my youngest son, and I was shocked that there was 100 people in that room, probably 50 companies, all from dentists to lawyers to contractors to beauty spas, you name it.
Yeah.
And 95% of those people, all of their marketing dollars were spent on Facebook. And it was fascinating. And there were people spending $15,000, $20,000, $30,000 a month on Facebook. And I was shocked by that because I had never done any of that. And I said to Kevin, let's go try it. And they gave us a formula to start with. And it was fascinating. It worked right away, like instantaneous. like within the first week.
Well, I mean, you see the likes, the comment, you can see that part physically, but then getting people to what you need them to go to, it's that's.
But it was just fascinating to see. So that was my first foray into that, and then we started working with a couple of different consultants, and we learned what they learned, and then we moved on to a different one. And Kevin's gotten better over time and learning more, and now we have Chris who's learning as well. So you have to have a little bit of a team. I would encourage anyone that's listening, if they're going to go down this journey, is try to find your own key team member. You are going to need some remote people to help you, but I just don't feel like this is something you can just fire off to an agency and hope they're going to do it for you.
Yeah. So, when working with clients, like not just you aside, like you do have a team set up in place. When people ask questions, my job is to sell you airtime, but it's also to be more of like a consultant where, hey, you should call this person if you're looking at doing local digital. You should call this person.
Yeah, give them resources.
Yeah, say this is what you should do. Like, you want to spend $5,000 a month with us. I understand that. What's in your plan for this? For us, I mean, us as like a radio sales rep, people think we're outdated. You're either nobody listens to radio. All radio salespeople are used car salesmen, and the goal is that I've tried to strive for over like 10 years is to not be that guy.
Well, I can truthfully say you did not come off that way, but I had that premonition in my head that I 100% believed that the radio, no one was listening to that station. I apologize to you for that, but the proof is in the pudding, and there was, I would say 25% of our visitors have come from some type of radio. In a very short period of time, very instantaneously.
I mean, we were on for 2 weeks leading up to the open house we were actually at. So I know your guys were kind of there. And we had our golf tournament that you guys sponsored as part of it. So I met them. And I'm like looking over there, someone comes in, I'm like, us? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, oh, okay. So it's also nice to be at an event like that where it does have success, because plenty of times in the past, almost 2 decades, I've been on the other end of that, like,
yeah, nobody shows up.
Yeah, and it's like, but then it's tailored into the fact that they relied too heavily on this. They didn't have like other avenues to advertise.
And obviously ADU is a very hot topic as well, right? And it's a lot on a lot of people's minds. Yeah. So and that's one of the reasons why I focused on it. Partly for me, I've been building since 1991. And prior to that, I was a framer since '84, so I've been in construction a long time. And I built a lot of stuff. Fire and water damage, new construction, subdivisions, condominiums, starter homes, I've built a lot of structures. And met with a lot of clients, sold a lot of stuff, put a lot of deals together. And to me, I really just enjoy this whole family dynamic of this ADU thing. I fell in love with it when we were meeting with those people at the Mayette open houses, and I said to the team, this is the direction we're going in. I really enjoy this. This is kind of a mission-driven thing for me. Absolutely, do I want to make money? 100%. Yeah. But I feel like I'm really filling a need, and I get a lot of satisfaction of seeing this come together.
Well, the conversation. So a couple of the people would stop at the table before going in, and we've always thought about this. This is something we've always wanted to do. We're going to do an expansion, but like this makes more sense because my dad's getting older. Right. Like the guy who came in and he brought his son, he's like, oh, we love Kevin, but like we actually, and then he walked in and was in there for like 25 minutes, asking a million questions. You're right, there is a need for it. My parents are getting older. And I know, not elder care, but I know that that's expensive, and it might be a cheaper option. Not that it's cheap.
If you need assisted living, it's going to be somewhere between $12,000 and $18,000 a month. So in 2 years, you're going to pay off your ADU.
Yeah.
And now listen, there may be some point they need that because you just can't physically take care of them anymore. But you want to delay that as long as possible because the quality of life is going to be much better. Listen, even if that assisted living facility is 10 minutes away from your house, you're not going to see them every day.
No,
there's just no way, right? Everybody's running full bore just to stay ahead of whatever they're heading away of, right? So if it's 10 minutes away, it might as well be 10 hours away because you're just not going to get over there every day versus 40 or 50 feet away when you can go over and say hello.
And I'll tell you what you told me, like why people get an ADU, and as everything you said resonated. Like my parents are getting older, I'm like, oh, that makes sense. And then my brother has Down syndrome. I'm like, my wife and I have actually talked about ADUs for the future. So maybe I'll give you a call in a few years. We'll see how the radio relationship goes.
But I'm gonna buy my way into this deal.
Yeah, but you know what I mean. Like
Yeah.
we've talked about it before we even knew. I knew what
100%.
BuildX was.
Yeah.
My friend is the youngest of his family, and he has his mom living with him.
Yep.
And she is unfortunately deteriorating at a rate, but he's got like a front row seat to it,
Yep.
and he doesn't know what to do because
Yep.
they can't afford. She didn't save properly, and
Yep.
this stock market crash, and this happened in
Yep.
her lifetime. So, but I don't want to say he's stuck because we all love Mrs. Pimentel, but like he's stuck
Yeah.
with Mrs. Pimentel, like in the house.
Yeah.
And you kind of see this and you're like, oh, wow. And then you see the situation at Bartlett Road when the daughter-in-law came over and was talking to us, and she was explaining the situation. I'm like, how is everybody not even evaluating this? Who's in this situation? Because she's a couple years older than I am. And I'm like, oh my God, this is looking into a crystal ball for
Yeah.
like 10 years down the
100%.
road. So
Yeah.
the fact that more people haven't reached out is surprising. But
No, I mean, I think that, I would say I'm going to say every 100 that come in the door, there are 1 to 2 that are like, we're doing this.
yeah,
And then another 40% are, we're in the beginnings of thinking about doing it. And the rest are like, I just wanted to see what it was. I'm thinking about it.
yeah,
And then there's 20% that are like, you know what, I'm never going to do this, but I wanted to see what it was.
yeah.
Right? So, but it's more than 50%, in my opinion, of the people that come to that open house. There's more than 50% are going to do something in the near future, within 1 to 4 years.
So do you find that filling the funnel, like if 100's the magic number, you drop it to like 50 in your mind, and that's legitimately like, hey, this is my fishing, the pond I'm fishing in is 50, and then pulling out 2 or 3 fish out of that. So for you in marketing, it's what can give you the most leads in a short period of time so that your funnel's constantly refilling?
Yeah.
Okay.
So for now, our primary lead sources are Facebook.
Yep.
And that drives them to our content, right? So there's been a dramatic shift. I'm just going to tell you some anecdotal evidence just to buckle and brace this. So, I've been selling in houses a long time. I started in 1980 selling blown-in insulation in Dorchester, where back then we actually had a bank that would finance it, and you would call them up to 10 p.m. at night, and you would put the people on the phone, and they would prove them over the phone, and then you would sign
sign here. You're approved.
sign the $3,600 contract,
Yeah.
and then I would get 10% of that. And then at the time, HBO was a signal that they transmitted, and they had to put an antenna on their house. And then I would pivot to my HBO. I put my HBO hat on, and I would sell them HBO and make another $50 to $75.
I did not know that about you. It makes a lot of sense, though. Salespeople are very analytical.
So, the only reason I got that HBO deal was I was working a home show, and the HBO booth was next door,
Right
and I
next
started
to you.
talking to the guy. He said, "Hey, why don't you do this as an add-on? You're already in the house, and whatever you sell, you're gonna." I think it was $50 or $75. I don't know what. But, and then we would do the old 5 rounds. So you would say to the customer, "Hey, introduce me to your 5 neighbors," or if they didn't know who they were, you would go knock on 5
Like,
doors.
oh, I was just at their house.
Yeah,
And,
and
yep.
they just bought insulation. The chances are you don't have any insulation. For $200 a month, we can save you $500 a month in oil, and blah, blah,
And
blah.
I can get you a great deal on HBO.
And I can get you a great deal on HBO.
Now, so it's funny you say that. I told you I was practicing what I was going to say, right? Like, it's talking to people. And if you're comfortable talking to people, sales is fine. But if you're not, it's got to be brutal for you.
Again, you shouldn't be agenda driven.
100%.
So, I'm trying to find out most of my first Zoom meetings is to try to find out what their needs are. And if I'm going to be able to give them something that fits into that, the beginnings of fitting into their dream.
Yeah.
Right? And chances are, it's high, but there are some Zoom meetings we have, and at the conclusion of the Zoom meeting, I'll say, I don't think an ADU is a good fit for you, and here's why. And, we don't do what it is you're trying to do.
Yeah.
We want to convert a basement, and the ceiling's only 6'7" high, and there's no egress. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm not going to do that for safety reasons. So I'm not your contractor. Appreciate the call, right? And we'll move on. So to answer your question as far as filling the funnel, so in the early days for us at BuildX was all Facebook.
Yep.
And I think the numbers are somewhere I'm going to call it 0 to 6 months, people that are ready to buy within 0 to 6 months. It's 1 out of 100 that come on Facebook. And then I think it's the same number for, I think the number's a little more higher intent in the open house, but it's too early to tell. But if I go back to the ones that we have under contract now, they all came to almost all, 80% of them came to the first open house that I had on Jordan Road.
So it's getting them to see what it actually looks like. You know, you can only answer so many questions by showing floor plans, right? Like,
correct.
So
again, it's impossible. Listen, even if you're coming out of a 1,500 square foot house and someone says to you 900 square feet, you're like, oh my God, where am I going to live?
Yeah.
Right. And what's the most prevalent thing you heard from people going in the door and coming out?
From us, it was, wow, this is a lot bigger than I would have ever thought. And when you had, I like that. I know that you're in sales because you're like, oh, that's why I did 9-foot ceilings and the windows. But all of those things give it this like illusion of like I'm walking into like a home, not an apartment. And like that's, I got to imagine when people think ADUs, they're like, I'm not downsizing.
100%.
But then they see that and they're like, oh,
I could live.
I can fit 3 stools at the kitchen island.
Yeah.
So I can have my family here. It's not this like compact area.
And that's what that's how that whole open house, journey began over, and that was on a whim. It was based. I had a phone call with a digital advertiser for a new website that I was thinking about, and one of his sales offshoot for remodeling is they would do an open house at a remodel. They would just do it once. Yeah. And we were in the middle of building the Mayette thing, and I approached Pam, who I've known forever, and I said, Pam, would you mind if I have my open house? Some open houses. I'm getting some inquiries. She said, absolutely, go ahead. And I was blown away by the response of how many people showed up. And then just hearing those stories over and over again, I said, you know what, this is for me. I really like this. This is going to have a lot of legs. It's going to go on for a long time. There's a lot of people that need this housing, right? And I just got excited about it. And then the more I got excited about it, the more I sold it. And then the more I sold it, the more excited I got about it. And then started developing plans based on the discussions with clients. And it's just kind of
kind of grew from there.
Yeah.
There was one couple when we were there who came in, and you said they told you that they were working with a competitor of yours, and when they came to the table, I could see like you're like, yeah, like I'm like this, they're good, and I was talking to them, and they're like, yeah, but they don't have something we can walk into, like we get to see it, and like this is great, this is much bigger than we thought, like we've only seen 6 or 7 plans of like what they sell. Like we've never been in one. Right. And it's like, if you're already talking to somebody, and again, like for me, I prospect off of other radio stations, and you mentioned WATD. I listen to WATD, not for the content, to use advertising. Yep. I listen to Boston stations because we spill in. I listen to Rhode Island stations. It's a unique geographical location we're in. However, like I felt for that person. I'm like, what do you mean they've never seen it? Like, and they're like, no, we got to like walk into our potential bedroom. I'm like, oh, that's great. And I kind of like walked away from the open house we were at, and I'm like, I'm not sure what your competition's doing. I'm not sure how they set their structure up, what their calls look like. But I'm like, if you have a competitor who's doing the same thing who doesn't have that, it's like, what are you doing? Like, this is what sells it.
Well, I think so. The key to that, and just to buckle and embrace that, what I see is I'm not going to call competitors, but other people in this space, right? I don't feel like anyone, quite frankly, I don't feel like any of them are competing with me. I feel like they're doing their own thing, and that's great. But I think for me, it's the relationship I have with my customers. Yeah. Right? And I think you can see that if you watch my testimonials, right? Yeah. And so they trust me with being able to show their property. I would say there's a very small percentage of builders that would the customers would allow them to show their properties.
I wouldn't want somebody on my property.
Right, but the secret is that they know me and they trust me and they know I'm going to take care of this stuff.
Yeah, you're there from step 1 through final. Here are your keys, right?
Correct.
Like you're the guy, and they're not dealing with subcontractors if there's a problem, you're the guy who handles it.
100%.
Obviously,
so it's fascinating from that standpoint, and I think that we've gotten out early in front of this, and obviously spent quite a sum of money and time and energy, really promoting it. Yeah. and now radio has become part of that tool chest. And I think we've made an interesting pivot to the, what we've pivoted to now. I'm not going to spill the beans on that, but I think it's good. So I'm excited about it. So let's pivot a little bit off of ADUs and us and me, and tell me what industry trends you're seeing.
So digital, obviously, we've talked a lot about in this call, is always going to be, it's hard for me to say this because I do work for Easy 99.1. Digital's king. It wasn't 7 years ago when I started selling digital back in 2008. And again, if you bought radio, you'll understand this. I'm going to sell you a digital ad. It's basically your logo on our station website, and it's $250 a month. The evolution of, the pandemic, consumption of audio, which has come through Alexa, it's come through your smartphone, it's come through Sirius, Spotify, Pandora. It has taken a little bit away from radio. Now, I was having this conversation with Jeff at one of the open houses, at the open house we were at, and I know we have one coming up this weekend. Our station reaches the person who hasn't really been affected by that.
Yeah.
Right? So
it's fascinating.
I can't sit here and tell you I would ever sell radio commercials for a station that reaches 18 to 25-year-olds because I don't think that radio station exists anymore.
I concur.
So when people say, "Oh, radio's dying," I said, "The segment's dying."
Yeah, the population.
like the people who will listen to Maddie in the morning,
right.
Or a
Yeah, so at some point, 20 years from now, you're in trouble.
Yeah, we're hoping the lottery hits by then, but no. So the thing that
theoretically, as those people age or out, they get back to being in the car and listening to the radio.
Yeah, so
that'll be interesting to see that played out. Hope I'm here to see that.
We'll both be here. You'll still be buying Easy 99.1, but no.
Still be selling ADUs.
I think the biggest trend is obviously the way people consume audio, right? Podcasting, here we are, but think about, I think when you said to me our first meeting, you're like, "Oh, radio, this is going to be a fun meeting." That's a shared perception from a lot of people.
Yeah, 100%. I fully admit that. I had definitely preconceived notions about whether it was going to work or not. I'm very pleasantly surprised. And I'm not afraid to say you were right and I was wrong.
Listen, I don't like to pat myself on the back.
No, you were 100% right. Listen, I was wrong once, but I was mistaken about that.
I think that, like I said, there's a demo that's only going to ever be tied to podcasts and less about top 40 music. But that station that's top 40 that, reaches their target audience is the 12 to 18-year-old.
Right.
And again, yes, is that 30 years my future? When I'm 75, I hope I'm retired. But yes,
we'll keep it going.
That is a little scary. But for and I was telling Jeff, our consumers, our listeners are the perfect consumers. They're 45, 55, 60.
Absolutely.
They're not only buying for themselves, they're making decisions for their parents. They're still buying stuff for their kids, and chances are they have grandkids that they're also providing for.
100%.
They're probably at the peak of their earning potential in their career.
And spending.
Yep, and spending. There you go. The kids are out of college or in college, so where I'm at in the station I'm at, the format we have is perfect. And if you look at the South Shore, it's typically an affluent area, so higher end items do well. Now, on the flip side, there are people who don't do well that they don't take advice. So, and I mean,
and that's what I said to you from day one. I said, listen, this is what I think, but you tell me if you think it's wrong. And obviously it was, fairly right, and we're going to keep tweaking it, right? Yeah. That's the other thing. You can't be afraid to try something new and see if it fails.
Well,
right?
The great thing, again, here we go with the radio spiel. The great thing about radio is it's the only medium that you can switch in a day.
Yeah.
You want to change your spot from a 30 to a 60, get me the copy, we can do it. I know digital, there's creative. I know TV, you have to reshoot a commercial.
Yeah, a lot of work. Yeah, TV is a different animal altogether, and that's one of the reasons why I haven't done any TV at all, because I can truthfully say I have no business advertising on TV because I have no idea what that was going to pull.
It's like we talked a little bit about this, like, sales reps kind of have a bad reputation, especially in media, because if it doesn't work for you, you're going to tell your connections. You're like, oh, I tried it, doesn't work. And if you had a bad experience with me, you're like, oh, this guy basically sold me something and never talked to me again.
Yeah.
I see a lot of it with some of our competitors in terms of mediums of advertising. TV, there was a local guy that I do work with now. He bought TV. Now, you can buy TV by zones. So, like, if you want South Shore.
Yeah, I'm aware of that. Yeah.
And he didn't have a plan, and he didn't clearly communicate what he wanted. He said, I have a $20,000 budget. So his 22-year-old sales rep, and I won't say names or stations or anything like that, said, oh, we can do a plan. He was getting calls from Western Massachusetts.
Yeah.
Yeah, he subserves the Plymouth County area. And he's like, how'd you hear me? He's like, oh, I saw you on Fox.
Yeah,
and he's like,
worked out.
He's like, wait, what? And he's like, I'm not out there. So when he looked at the plan, because he didn't know what he was looking at, and he's just like, oh, it's cost $20,000, here you go. Yeah. He bought a plan that blanketed the state of Massachusetts, and it didn't work. And
yeah, for anyone listening, those plans, you can dial in what towns you want to be shown
100%.
in, what channels you want to be on, and what frequency you can be on.
Yeah, so you tell them what demo you want, who you're reaching,
Correct.
what zip codes you can sell to, and they'll narrow it down pretty considerably for you.
All right, so now we're going to switch back to you. Enough about ADUs and BuildX and WPLM. So who were your early mentors that influenced you in your career?
So I have a couple of people I'll give credit to, and ironically, one is the sales manager at Easy 99.1. So when I started at Fun 107 in New Bedford, I'm fresh off the knife job. She was the promotions director. So she's the one who kind of encouraged selling half-baked ideas. We'll get you more meetings. Like, hey, I've got this great idea. We're going to do X, Y, and Z, and people will at least meet with you. So she kind of, I guess, shaped how my meetings were. But then she would also be the person when I came back and I sold something, would help me execute it. So, like, it was never too crazy. And she would be the person who facilitated it. After 16 years, about 3 years ago, I was thinking about leaving radio. I had a couple of job offers from digital, and Deb is a good friend of mine. Her son is my godson. We're tight, and we have been for a long time. She's like, hey, would you want to come work down here? And I'm like, full disclosure, and I said it to her, and she'll laugh at the story now. I said, I don't know if I want to sell radio anymore. The future's in digital. And if you guys don't sell digital, I don't think I can commit to going back in time. And she goes, you're a father of two now. Like, do you want like a father lifestyle where you can like go home at 3 o'clock and pick your kids up? She was the selling point of me coming to where I am now.
Interesting.
And working for a family-owned business that has 10 employees and it runs pretty tight-knit group. It's probably the best decision I've made because I spent so many years corporate. Oh, what did you do today? What did you do today? This is like, oh, you sold something? Great. Like, go have fun with your kids. Like, it's much different, and I can appreciate both sides of it, but she certainly was the person who, A, got me to Easy 99.1, but helped me out really early in my career. And then there's one other manager, and you've been in sales. You probably worked for people you didn't like at the time.
I've always worked for myself. I had 2 jobs in my entire life working for somebody else, and they both lasted less than a week.
Yeah,
I am like I joke with people. The reason I have to work for myself is because I'm unemployable.
Don't say that. No one's unemployable.
No, I'm unemployable. 100%.
When I got hired in Boston, I worked for a guy. They did this for all the radio stations. They're going to hire 5 22-year-olds, and they give you this spiel. One of you is going to make it. Yeah. And we don't care which one it is. It's whoever. So almost like pitting a dog fight in a commissioned sales job is weird.
10 man came in, 1 man comes out.
The guy who hired me got let go after 3 months, and they moved up a sales rep, a South Shore guy, Jesse Carboni. He's still at ROR. They moved him up, and to be completely honest with you, I could not stand him. He was the guy who instilled work ethic in me, but he did it in a way that I was like, oh, this guy is brutal. He's like, how many calls did you make today? And I'd be like, oh, I made 20 calls. He's like, you couldn't make 25? And he'd like embarrass me in front of the senior reps. Right. And it came to a point where it was just like, my goal was to beat him to whatever he was going to say. Be like, no, I made 30 today. What are you going to, like, yeah, I made 30. Oh, I have 10 meetings next week. And I realized only after I left, and he helped me negotiate a deal. Like, he and I became pretty close, and we are still close. I was like, Jesse, I hated you. I said, I would wake up and I did not want to like see your face. And he goes, look where you are now. He's like, you're the one person from that ROR staff who's still selling radio. And I was like, well, you know, taking a step back in a way and looking at it, you could be like, it's like, God, that guy, he's such a jerk. But look where, it's like, he's right. Because, you know, that's the problem. Sales reps, they're afraid to pick up the phone.
Well, I can truthfully say people have said that about me as well.
But listen, I mean, at the end of the day, he progressed me to a point from being he had one line that I'll never forget. We're having our one-on-one, and I'm probably at this point 24, making like 35 grand. Like barely paying my rent. And he shuts the door and he's like, hey, we just need to have a conversation. I'm like, am I gonna get fired? Like, I just sold something. He goes, do you realize in this job, the more you sell, the more money you make? He's like, this is a sales job. You don't sell anything. He's like, what are you doing here? And I'm like, what are you talking about? I just sold this. He goes, you sold a $30,000 program in a year and you're excited? He's like, this guy bills $2 million. This guy bills this. He's like, and he said it in such a polite way. He was just like, you're gonna drive that Ford Fusion forever. And I was like, I like my Ford Fusion. That was my response. I was like, I like that car. And then I like went home and resignated, like, okay, maybe it's time to take it a little more seriously. And here I am.
All right, so he beat you into getting going.
He beat me into a skill set that I appreciate now.
All right, so shout out.
Yeah.
We'll give him a shout out.
Jesse, thank you for everything. Here I am. I've made it.
And now you're on the BuildX Podcast.
Now, look at me, Jesse. No, but definitely those two people.
All right, good stuff. So now we're going to have a little fun. Favorite tool you can't live without, and it can't be your phone.
Favorite tool I can't live without. Yep. We renovated a house last year, renovated it from floor to walls. I got to say the power drill, right? Like how many screws I had to put in. Like, and it was to a point where I have like 3 backup batteries.
Yeah.
And it like, the first one you like, you know, I'm the guy whose dad helps him out, and my wife's father, rest in peace, he was very handy. I'm not. YouTube was like my figuring it out kind of thing. But there's one guy and he's showing like, it was hanging drywall. And it's like, you got to do this, and then you have to put so I'm like, this can't be that hard. Yeah, I didn't hang it right. And it like fell down. And I realized like, I'm like, okay, what's going on here? It's because it's like, I'd let it sit, it had started sinking and like sliding down. So this guy on YouTube, and he basically said I have 5 battery packs for one tool. And I'm like, why? And then it'd be like 2 in the morning and then the battery pack would run out. And I'm like, I still have so much stuff to do.
Right.
And I'd have to stop. So not having enough battery packs, but definitely the drill.
All right.
The drill is that, 100%.
Dream project you'd love to work on?
Dream project I'd like to work on. Can I answer building an ADU in my yard with you?
There you go. Perfect.
I think professionally it's probably getting a concert off the ground at the station, and we're actually kind of in talks of getting that going. A couple years ago would have been
like as a promotion.
Oh yeah, like
you would be the promoters.
Yeah, it would be the Easy 99.1 concert.
Awesome.
We've done a smaller one last year. We had a lot of success. It was Evelyn Champagne King.
Yeah.
Who was a disco.
That's a good one to start with.
It was, and we saw the results. You know, the station had one before COVID. It was the Tavares brothers, and it sold out. Like, so they have success there, but getting to a point where we can comfortably pay an artist at a higher level so that we can make more in sponsorships and ticket sales. That's a dream project for the station. Again, I'm going to answer personally to build an ADU in my yard.
All right. All right. Best piece of advice you've ever received? Besides sell more.
I was just going to say, I thought I gave that to you. Honestly, it's keep your head down and keep working. My dad, great guy, hard worker, instilled work ethic at a very young age. And when I would complain when I was younger, he'd be like, what are you complaining about? The job's not done. So when I would like cutting the grass, and then that kind of weirdly has stemmed into like something's going on at work. Well, if you can't fix it, keep working through it because it's going to eventually figure itself out.
Right.
So putting your head down and working is very cliche, for salespeople. But
it still rings true.
yeah, and if you do it, chances are you'll forget about the problem in 2 hours after making 20 calls. So,
There you go.
Yeah.
Advice you would give your younger self?
Sell more.
Sell more. When in doubt, sell.
No, I would say the younger self, I have 2 kids now, married, house, it would be save more money. I did not do a very good job. I was the guy who was selling kitchen knives, getting like a $1,200 check, and $800 of it was gone before I hit direct deposit. Saving. And I probably would have lived at my parents' for the first year that I was in Boston and commuted. That, not realizing how much rent is and that it's due every month, and like kind of that like, oh, my parents paid for everything. I was very fortunate where they helped me out.
Right.
And they charged me $250 a month for rent. And I'm like, yeah, I pay rent, I get it. And then you go to Quincy and it's like $1,700 a person and your paychecks are only $1,900. Like, I would have liked to save more leading up to that point in time.
All right, favorite food and dessert?
I think favorite dessert, it's 100 degrees today, ice cream.
Which flavor?
I'm a cookie dough guy. Or
Okay, what brand?
Hood.
Hood, okay.
I'm a
And
Hood
mint
guy.
chocolate chip as well?
Yeah, but it's got to be green. I don't know.
So that's the second week in a row we've had this got to be green. You realize it's a food dye, right?
Oh, 100%. And it's probably wrong. It's probably really bad for me. But I feel it tastes better. It's more aesthetically pleasing for me when I'm eating green ice cream.
That's too funny.
And then food, I'll go tacos. I'm a big taco guy.
All right. Any particular place?
So there's a Fiesta Mexican restaurant in the Bridgewaters. When we lived in West Bridgewater, that's where we would go. We'd have Taco Tuesday on a Thursday, my wife and I.
There you go.
that was our place with a spicy margarita.
All right, a little off topic of that. Where do you see AI infiltrating your industry?
It already is.
In what way?
So I can tell you where it's infiltrating corporately, like the iHearts and the Odysseys. For us, it's different because we are locally owned. All of our DJs are live. AI is taking over on like a Boston level shows, like full shows. They're like fully produced from a computer. They're spit out. They're syndicated. Basically you spit copy out. Right? ChatGPT writes copy for people now. For us locally, it hasn't really integrated into what I do on a day-to-day. The only thing it's done for us is it makes proposal writing a lot easier. Yeah. And not from like spitting out information and having it like put it together, but like the designs and the templates. Mm-hmm. Like one day I will show you like the original like proposals that we give would be the logo in the corner, like one bar. Old and school. It's like, BuildX, like presented by Andy Corbett, Easy 99.1. But now it's like you type in ADU. Like, perfect example, the one you got for me said I typed in ADU. Nothing popped up, accessory dwelling unit. Then all of a sudden, the house has popped up. And then there was a way to delete the picture of the house and take yours and put it over. So it's making life easier, and I can only see it becoming more impactful as the years go down. Bigger markets like Boston that are run by iHeart, they will cut costs by using AI. Whether it's copywriting, whether it's production, whether it's actual shows from start to finish. Like, it's going to hit them a lot quicker than it will hit us. But it's interesting to see because it has taken over, 100%.
Yeah. If you could have dinner with anyone alive or dead, who would it be?
That's a good question. I have 2 answers. I'm a 2-answer guy.
That's fine.
All right. My grandfather, because he started a chain of pharmacies in New Jersey, and he lived down in Key West on the water, had a great life, but I only really got to know him the last 2 years of his life, which flying down to Key West was maybe like 2 or... I'd like to just ask him how he got started.
Sure.
Because I'm always intrigued, and I've asked you, like, how did you start? Why did you start? But he started a drugstore back before you needed all these crazy licensings, and he had a chain of drugstores. So he obviously helped pay for some of my school.
Sure.
I feel like there's a thank you that I never gave him in the time I knew him.
Yeah.
I would really like to have dinner and drinks with John Daly. My golf game is modeled after him. And my dog's name is Daly. So
Oh, there you go.
yeah, I feel like he'd be a fun guy to have drinks with. But yeah, those are probably my grandfather on a more realistic note.
Yeah, we can. We'll work on the daily thing.
Listen,
Not out of reach.
yeah, I mean that one's actually doable. I feel like
Yeah.
I just got to be at the right place at the right time.
100%. All right. If you had $10 million to donate, how would you donate it?
If I had $10 million to donate, how would I donate it? I would give a substantial portion of it to Special Olympics in Massachusetts. Obviously, I mentioned my brother has Down syndrome. I've been involved in the Special Olympics probably since I was like 8 years old. I'd go to his basketball practices. The coaches would include me, let me play. And then do you know what Unified Sports is?
Yes.
Yeah,
I do.
I was like the first iteration of Unified Sports.
Okay.
So I was on the basketball team.
Both of my children actually all three of my children have volunteered at the Coastal Snap,
Okay.
which does the basketball program
Yeah.
and the soccer program.
So I did basketball. I was like a player coach, and it holds obviously the weekend in Boston that they do, the state games, the summer games is great. And then honestly just seeing the joy that this is going to get a little emotional, but the joy that my brother got and everybody on his team and everybody participating. It's
100%.
like it's their weekend and
Yeah.
it's something that's probably so abnormal for them. And so I'd say a good portion of it would go to Special Olympics Massachusetts. You know what? I'd probably go all of it.
Okay. We're going all in.
Listen,
All in.
I'd go all in.
I like
because
that.
I've
I like
spent a
that.
lot of time with them, obviously
Yep.
Dartmouth, but yeah, definitely.
All right, good stuff. Well, that's a wrap for today's episode of the BuildX Podcast. Thanks to Andy Corbett from WPLM-FM, Easy 99.1 for joining us. Please subscribe, like, and share if you've enjoyed it. See you next week. And remember, just build, baby.
Appreciate it. Just build, baby.